What if I told you the next big threat to Boeing and Airbus isn't coming from Seattle or Toulouse, but from Shanghai? A narrow-body jet that looks suspiciously familiar, same size, same performance claims, even the same engines. Yet it carries a name most of the world still struggles to pronounce, the COMAC C919. For years, critics dismissed it as little more than a state-backed science project, a political showpiece that would never leave China's borders. But here's the twist, not only is it flying, it's carrying paying passengers every single day. And in 2025, it suddenly started showing up in places no one expected. If Airbus and Boeing had gotten used to a cozy duopoly, the C919 may be the alarm bell they never wanted to hear. So how did a paper airplane suddenly become an industry game-changer? Stay with me, because by the end, you'll see why the real shock isn't about how far the C919 can fly, but how far China's aviation ambitions will go. It all began on May 28, 2023. Flight MU-9191, Shanghai to Beijing, 2 hours, 130 passengers, one historic moment. The C919 officially entered commercial service with China Eastern Airlines. Cameras rolled, officials clapped, and passengers stepped off smiling. That wasn't just a ceremonial trip, it was proof that COMAC had built an aircraft ready for the grind of daily schedules. By mid-2025, China Eastern had flown over 1 million passengers on the type. That's not a headline, it's data. On paper, the C919 reads like an Airbus A320neo competitor, 158 to 192 seats, 4,000 to 5,500 kilometers range, and modern LEAP 1C engines. To passengers, the cabin feels familiar, to airlines, the economics promise to be competitive. Here's where the curiosity deepens. If the C919 is just an A320 clone, why should anyone outside China care? Because in 2024 to 2025, it began moving beyond China's domestic trunk routes. Hong Kong first, then whispers of Southeast Asia, Bangkok, Singapore, Jakarta. That shift from showcase to scheduled regional ops is the real plot twist. Quick question for you, if you had to pick between flying an A320, a 737 MAX, or this brand new Chinese jet on the same route, which would you choose? Drop it in the comments, I want to know your gut reaction. Now, let's peel back the layers. Underneath that smooth fuselage lies the C919's biggest strength and its biggest weakness. Its power comes from the LEAP 1C, a joint GE Safran engine. The same technology powers thousands of Airbus and Boeing jets. Sounds great, right? Except it means COMAC is vulnerable to US export controls. And guess what happened? In 2025, Washington paused engine shipments. For a moment, it looked like the C919's wings were clipped before it could soar. But then, weeks later, the US relented, allowing shipments to resume. The message was clear, geopolitics can make or break this jet overnight. That's why China is fast-tracking its own alternative, the CJ1000A engine. Still in testing, not yet certified, but if it works, the C919 will no longer need permission from Washington to fly. And here's where I want you to pay close attention. What happens when the C919 is no longer tied to Western supply chains? Suddenly, it's not just a domestic airplane, it's an export product with independence. That's the real coup. Let's step back and look at the bigger chessboard. Airbus and Boeing have been locked in a two-player game for decades. Between them, they've controlled over 90% of the narrow-body market. New challengers tried before, Russia's Sukhoi Superjet, Canada's Cheris, even Japan's MRJ, but none broke through at scale. So why could the C919 be different? 3 reasons. Market size, China's domestic demand alone can absorb thousands of jets. Even if no one else buys it, the program survives. Policy power, Beijing can tilt orders toward COMAC, giving the jet guaranteed customers. Symbolism, every successful international route adds credibility and chips away at the duopoly's monopoly on trust. Here's something to think about, Airbus and Boeing are backlogged well into the 2030s. If you're an airline in Asia desperate for capacity, do you keep waiting or take a chance on COMAC? That's the uncomfortable question. But there's another cliffhanger here, certification. The C919 is cleared by China's regulator, but the real prize is validation from EASA or the FAA. Europe has already sent teams to China. No timeline yet, but every step forward makes it more credible to lessors and international carriers. And this is where the Hong Kong flights, and soon Southeast Asia, become strategic. They're not just routes, they're testbeds to prove reliability to skeptical regulators. Think of it like this: every on-time departure from Shanghai to Hong Kong isn't just another flight, it's an argument in COMAC's case file. So where does that leave Boeing and Airbus? Not panicking, but paying attention. The C919 won't wipe out their market tomorrow, but it will eat into Chinese demand they once counted on, and that shifts balance in negotiations. Want to sell wide bodies to China? You may have to accept that narrow bodies go to COMAC. And remember, the C919 is just step one. Next on the horizon? The C929, a wide body aimed squarely at the A350 and Boeing 787. That's when things get very interesting. The C919 isn't a better airplane than the A320neo or 737 MAX, at least not yet. But it doesn't have to be. It just has to be good enough, reliable enough, and independent enough to prove China can compete at the highest level. And that's exactly what it's doing right now. The duopoly isn't dead, but for the first time in decades, it isn't alone. Before you go, let me ask you this: if the C919 makes it to Europe or Southeast Asia in the next few years, would you trust it on your next holiday flight, or wait until it's proven on the global stage? Tell me in the comments below. And hey, if you want more deep dive aviation stories like this, smash that like button, it helps push this video to more aviation fans like you. Subscribe with the bell on, because when the first C919 lands in Bangkok or Paris, you'll want to be the first to know.